Hey sports fans, Coach Nick here and welcome to B-Ball Breakdown. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter because if you tweet to me, I will respond, most likely, and we have a great conversation there, so don't miss it. Now let's talk about the Toronto Raptors because I'm really excited to be able to break down something monumentous for them, which is a turning point in their season. Now people want to argue that the Rudy Gay trade was a turning point, but in my mind, until you do it on the court, it doesn't really kind of count. And here, a game against the Pacers, the East leading Pacers, the way they won down the stretch was very impressive. And no one was more impressive to me than DeMar DeRozan, but a very close second was Terrence Ross, a guy who I was aware of last year after he started dunking all over the Heat. And now that he's gotten extended minutes and a bigger role, he's really performing well and is the linchpin for this new look Toronto Raptors team. Of all the players to directly benefit from the Rudy Gay trade, it seems pretty clear Terrence Ross has emerged from his protective shell to become a force. By sheer virtue of increased minutes, he's been able to ratchet up his production and with each play yields even more confidence as we saw last night. One way to see how increased ball movement has helped without the ball stopping of Rudy Gay is how many corner threes he's now gotten since the trade. These numbers are kind of staggering, and it's no surprise that the team has played with renewed vigor as the ball has been humming along through the offense. Terrence Ross was on fire last night and was helped by his excellent reads off the many pin downs the Raptors like to set. When Ross sees Stevenson go under the first screen, he knows he can step back on a flare cut and get the open shot, which he drains with no hesitation. On the baseline out of bounds, he's such a good leaper you have to guard against the lob, and Ross sets this up beautifully with a great V-cut. Valanciunas lays good wood on the cross screen, and Ross uses the hop to knock down another good-looking shot. Ross is super athletic and long, and forces Paul George into one of his 6 turnovers. And he's been improving his finishing at the rim, and there's no reason to believe he won't develop into a dominating finisher. Minimum 100 post-ups, Valanciunas is ranked 8th in the league, ahead of guys like Zebo, Cousins, and Kevin Love. That said, he is still used as a garbage man quite often, usually getting an ISO post-up at the end of the possession if their first option doesn't come to fruition. Roy Hibbert's foul situation came into play big time in this game, and you can't help but wonder how on earth he got called for some of these fouls. His great hustle to the rim cost him when he got his elbow a little too high for the baseline ref's taste, but that's pretty ho-hum contact. And when DeRozan wandered down amongst the trees, it's hard to understand how Hibbert could have been whistled for this when the little contact that did occur did not even affect the play. And perhaps the refs were influenced by how physical Hibbert and Hansbrough were being with each other, because there was plenty of contact happening before the shot, but hardly any at all on this rebound. And in a crucial sequence late in the game, Hibbert found himself with the ball at the top of the key. Not a great position for him. First, he totally dragged his pivot foot, no call, then starts to drive to the hoop, making him an easy target for Lowry to draw the contact and get Hibbert's 6th foul. Danny Granger had his best shooting night since his return to the lineup, and he's posting up a little bit more now than his career numbers. Here's a gorgeous up and under on an undersized Grievous Vasquez and jumpy Patrick Patterson. And here, you'll see the Pacers run a little Princeton offense when Scola makes a guard-to-guard pass, then gets a shuffle cut off of Hibbert. When the ball reverses, I'm fairly certain CJ Watson should be setting a down screen for Granger, even Hibbert is looking in that direction. But off the pick and roll, Granger gets that screen from Hibbert and gets into the lane. Notice almost no lift off his surgically repaired left knee. The Pacers continue to struggle with turnovers, and this game was no exception. They rank towards the bottom in turnovers per 48 minutes and turnover percentage. In one play, David West loses the handle, and as soon as Paul George steals it back, he holds the ball in bad position behind his head. And to make matters even worse, commits a clear path foul, which ultimately sparked a 9-0 run that allowed the Raptors to take control of this game. It was DeMar DeRozan's game, and he put his stamp on it by hitting clutch jumpers all night. Again, Toronto sets a ton of down screens, and watch how DeRozan glances back to see where Paul George is before shooting the open jumper. This is veteran stuff. Yet another simple pin down and another great read. As soon as he sees Stevenson go underneath the screen, he flares out behind the screener and without hesitation knocks down this mid-range shot, turning it into an and one. The Raptors run nice action out of horns as they get flex on the left side and a double screen on the right for DeRozan. He has the option of cutting along the baseline or using the down screen. You can just about see Paul George sink down to take away baseline, and DeRozan expertly reads this and runs him right into Amir Johnson's down screen. I did want to point out a few offensive sets that caught my eye. The Raptors move the ball much better without Rudy Gay, and they get some nice organic high-low action out of their inside screen and rolls. Because the Pacers are not icing this, they allow the ball handler to come back to the middle of the floor, and the screener's defender, having hedged high, is out of position, forcing Hibbert to defend two people. The Raptors are prepared and get a nice pass from Johnson to Valanciunas. The Raptors run the same play again, but this time they keep Hansbrough along the baseline and hit the roll man in the middle, opening up a 2-on-1 and a dunk for Psycho T. To start the second half, the Pacers get fancy with their version of the elevator play. After a cross screen, George shapes up in the middle of the lane and both West and Hibbert wait for his cut at the free throw line. As soon as he gets between them, they close the elevator doors. The Raptors do a good job defending this, but George hits a big boy shot. But as the Pacers kept threatening, it was DeMar DeRozan who took over. Another simple down screen, and Paul George foolishly tries to go underneath the screen, giving DeRozan just enough daylight. And here's a mark of greatness. When the play completely breaks down and the shot clock is working against you, can you get off a shot? DeRozan calmly isolates on the best defender in the league, beats him to the spot, and nails the shot in his eye. Game over. So there you have it, sports fans. If Ujiri does not win Executive of the Year or GM of the Year, whatever the award's called, I don't know what's going to happen, because here's a guy who's able to unload Bargnani and Rudy Gay in the same year, and is now improved the team to the point where they're going to contend in that upper half of the Eastern Conference, which is weak, mind you, but that's crazy what he's been able to do in a short amount of time, and now has cap flexibility and all sorts of moves he can make. So, really exciting happenings in Toronto. Lowry is playing really well as a point guard. And you know what? The Pacers are probably going to shrug and say, we'll beat them in a 7-game series. And that's most likely completely true. But it's still exciting to watch where the Raptors are going. So keep your eye on them, sports fans. And keep your eye on us, too, on Twitter and everything. We're about to have our 600th breakdown. I feel like it was just the other day we did 500. So stay with us. 2014 is going to be huge, trust me, and we'll have a lot of great content coming up. A special trip for me next week you'll see coming up soon, so stay tuned. And don't forget, at B-Ball Breakdown, we're not a channel, we're a conversation. You in?